I wake up at 4:30 in the morning now. That is just what happens when you get to be 72, and your wife is gone, and your house is gone, and the only thing left is a studio apartment above a garage in a town you never planned to live in. I wake up and I lie there, and I listen to the furnace kick on, and I think about how I got here. It is a long walk from where I started, from the house with the white fence and the two-car garage and the oak tree in the back where I hung a tire swing for my daughter when she was 4 years old. That tree is probably still there. The swing is not. They took the swing down the same year they took everything else. I make coffee in a 12-cup pot that only needs to make 2 cups now. I pour it into a mug that says World's Greatest Grandpa on the side. My granddaughter gave it to me when she was 7. She is 19 now. I have not seen her in 4 years. That is the kind of math that keeps you up at night. The kind of math that makes you realize love does not count for anything when there is money on the table. My name is Bill. I am 72 years old. I was a union electrician for 38 years. I worked nights and weekends and holidays so my kids could have new shoes, braces, and a college fund. I did not complain about it. That was the deal. You sign up to be a father and you show up and you do the work. I thought my wife signed up for the same deal. Her name is Diane. She was beautiful when I met her.
She was beautiful when I married her. She was beautiful when I held her hand in the delivery room for both of our children. She was beautiful the day I caught her with another man in the house I built for her. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning of the end. Let me start with my son. Kevin was my boy, my only son. He came out screaming and he never stopped. He was all energy and noise and stubbornness. He got that from me. I cannot pretend otherwise. I worked too much when he was little. I missed his first baseball game because I was pulling wire in a hospital that was being built. I missed his first word. He said "da-da," and Diane told me about it when I got home at 11 o'clock that night. I sat in the driveway for 10 minutes before I went inside because I knew I had missed something I would never get back.
That is the lie we tell ourselves, that one day they will get it. One day they will wake up and realize what you did for them. Most of them never do. Most of them just take and take until there is nothing left, and then they look at you like you are the burden. Kevin met a woman named Amanda in his junior year. Amanda was sharp. I meant that as a warning now, but I meant it as a compliment then. She was studying marketing. She knew how to sell things. She sold herself to my son first. Then she sold herself to us. She was polite and funny, and she laughed at my stupid jokes. She brought a bottle of wine the first time she came for Thanksgiving. She helped Diane in the kitchen. She played catch with Kevin in the yard. I thought she was perfect. I thought she was the best thing that ever happened to my boy. I was wrong. They got married 6 months after graduation. Big wedding, 300 people. I paid for most of it. Diane handled the planning. She loved every minute of it. I wrote a check for $23,000 and I did not blink, because that is what fathers do. You give, and you tell yourself it is an honor to give. They had a daughter 2 years later, little Lily. She had red hair like Amanda, and my son's blue eyes. She was perfect. I held her in the hospital and I cried. Diane cried too. We were grandparents. That was supposed to be the reward. That was supposed to be the part where all the hard work paid off. Kevin and Amanda bought a house 3 miles from ours. That was her idea. She said she wanted the baby to grow up near her grandparents. She said it takes a village. I believed her. I was the village. I was the babysitter. I was the handyman. I was the emergency contact at school. I was the one who picked Lily up when she was sick and sat with her on the couch watching cartoons while Diane worked her part-time job at the dentist's office. I loved every second of it. I loved that little girl more than I loved anything in the world. More than my truck, more than my tools, more than my retirement account. Let me tell you about the retirement account. I had a good one. I started saving when I was 25. I put money away every month, no matter what. Even when we were broke. Even when the washing machine died and the roof leaked and the car needed new tires. I never touched that money. I watched it grow. By the time I turned 65, it was worth just under $900,000. That was my ticket. That was the money I was going to use to travel with Diane. We talked about it for years. We talked about renting an RV and driving across the country. We talked about seeing the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone and the Redwood Forest. We talked about spending a month in Maine in the fall when the leaves turned. That was the dream. That was the whole point of all those years of hard work. I retired in April of 2016. Kevin threw me a party. He grilled steaks in my backyard. Amanda made a cake. Lily drew me a picture of me and her holding hands with the words, "I love you, Grandpa," written in crayon. I still have that picture. It is in a drawer next to my bed. I look at it sometimes when I cannot sleep. I look at it and I try to remember that little girl. I try to remember her laugh. Because the girl I see now is not the same person. The girl I see now is a stranger who looks like my granddaughter, but has her mother's cold eyes. The trouble started slowly, the way trouble always does. It never announces itself with fireworks. It just shows up like a faint smell in the basement. You notice it, and then you forget about it, and then it gets stronger. And by the time you go looking for it, the whole house is filled with rot. Kevin started coming around more often. That sounds like a good thing, but it was not. He started coming around to talk about money. Not his money, my money. He asked me one day if I had thought about an estate plan. I told him I had a will. He said I needed a trust. He said trusts were better because they avoided probate. He said he could help me set it up. He had a friend who was a lawyer, a guy named Brad from his college days. Brad specialized in elder law. Brad could get me set up with a revocable living trust. It would make things easier for everyone when I passed away. I did not want to think about passing away. I was 66 years old. I felt fine. I could still throw a baseball with Lily in the backyard. I could still change the oil in my truck. I was not ready to talk about dying. But Kevin kept pushing. He said it was irresponsible to leave things messy. He said Diane agreed with him. I looked at Diane and she nodded. She said we should do it for the kids, for Lily, for our family. So I said yes, because that is what I always did. I said yes to my family. We went to Brad's office in September. Brad was a nice guy, professional, clean-shaven. He had a big mahogany desk and a view of the river. He explained how the trust worked. He said I would be the trustee. I would control everything. Then when I died or became incapacitated, Kevin would take over as successor trustee. The house would go into the trust. The retirement accounts would go into the trust. The bank accounts would go into the trust. Everything would be protected. He said it was a common estate planning tool. He said every smart family did it. I signed the papers. I initialed every page. Brad notarized my signature. Diane signed as my witness. Kevin was not in the room for the signing. Brad said that was important because Kevin was a beneficiary. He could not be present. That made sense to me. I trusted Brad because Kevin trusted Brad. I trusted Kevin because he was my son. I trusted my own blood. That was my mistake. That was the mistake that destroyed everything. The first crack appeared 2 years later. Diane started acting strange. She was on her phone more. She would leave the room to take calls. She started going out on Tuesday nights. She said it was a book club. She had never been in a book club before. She did not like to read. She said she started liking it. She said it was good for her brain. I did not question it. You do not question your wife after 40 years. You assume she is telling you the truth because the alternative is too ugly to look at. I was wrong again. I found out about Diane and Brad on a Thursday. I had taken my truck to get the oil changed. I left my phone on the kitchen counter. When I came back, Diane was in the shower, and my phone was on the floor. I picked it up. The screen was lit up with a text message. Not mine, Diane's. She had been using my phone to text Brad because her phone was on the charger in the bedroom. She forgot to log out. She forgot to erase the conversation. I read the messages. I read every single one. I read about their meetings at a hotel near the airport. I read about how Brad made her feel young again. I read about how she wished she had met him 30 years ago. I read about how they were going to be together once everything was settled, once the trust was finalized, once I was out of the picture. I read that last part 3 times, once I was out of the picture. I threw up in the kitchen sink. Then I sat down on the floor and I cried. I cried like a child. I cried so hard my chest hurt. 42 years of marriage. 42 years of loving that woman. 42 years of thinking we were building something together. And she was planning my funeral with her lawyer boyfriend. I did not confront her right away. I waited. I wanted to see how deep it went. I wanted to see who else was involved. So I pretended I did not know. I smiled at breakfast. I kissed her cheek. I went to bed next to her every night. And I laid there with my eyes open. And I listened to her breathe. And I imagined all the things she had done with that man. It was torture, but I needed to know the truth. The truth was worse than I imagined. Kevin knew about Diane and Brad. He knew from the beginning. He set the whole thing up. Brad was not just Kevin's college friend. Brad was Kevin's partner. Not a business partner, an actual partner in a scheme to take everything I had. Kevin went to Brad first. He told Brad about his mother, about how she was lonely, about how she felt unappreciated, about how she might be open to an affair if the right man came along. Brad was divorced. Brad was looking for a woman with access to money. My money, Diane's money, the money they would get when I was gone. I found out because I hired a private investigator, a retired cop named Frank who lived 2 streets over from me. Frank was a good man. He did not judge me. He just took my check and went to work. He followed Diane to the airport hotel. He took pictures. He recorded their conversations from a room next door. He found emails between Kevin and Brad discussing the timeline. They had a plan. Phase 1 was the trust. Phase 2 was Diane's affair. Phase 3 was my death. Not murder, just waiting, just letting nature take its course. Brad told Kevin that older men died all the time. Heart attacks, strokes, falls. It would not look suspicious. It would just look like bad luck. I sat in Frank's car while he played the recordings for me. Diane telling Brad that I took Lipitor for my cholesterol, that I had high blood pressure, that the doctor said I needed to reduce my stress. Brad laughing. Brad saying stress was easy to create. Brad saying he could help with that. Diane laughing too.
Diane saying she could not wait until it was over. She could not wait to sell the house and move to Florida with him. She said Kevin was on board with everything. Kevin just wanted his inheritance sooner rather than later. He was tired of waiting. He was tired of pretending to care about me. I asked Frank to turn off the recording. I sat there in the passenger seat of his old Crown Victoria, and I stared at the dashboard, and I tried to remember a time when my life did not feel like a nightmare. I could not find one. Every memory was poisoned. Every Christmas, every birthday, every Father's Day card Kevin ever gave me. It was all fake. It was all a long con. My son had been playing me for a fool for years, and his mother helped him. I went home that night and I did not say anything. I went to bed. I laid there next to Diane and I listened to her pretend to be my wife.
She rolled over in her sleep and put her hand on my chest. I felt her fingers, her warm, soft fingers. The same fingers that touched another man. The same fingers that would sign papers to put me in a home if she could get away with it. I hated her. I hated her more than I have ever hated anyone in my life. But I did not move. I let her hand stay there, because I needed to keep pretending. I needed to buy myself time. The trust was the key. Brad told Diane that once I was incapacitated, Kevin could take over as trustee. He could move the assets, he could sell the house, he could drain the retirement accounts. There were safeguards in place to prevent abuse, but Brad had written the trust documents. Brad had built loopholes. Brad had made sure that Kevin would have full control with very little oversight. All it would take was a doctor's note saying I was no longer capable of managing my own affairs. I started making phone calls the next morning. I called a lawyer, not Brad, a real lawyer. A woman named Margaret who handled trust litigation. She was sharp, she was expensive. She was exactly what I needed. I met her in her office downtown. I brought Frank's recordings and the photos and the emails. I brought everything. Margaret listened. She took notes. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, and she said something I will never forget. She said, "Bill, this is not just a betrayal. This is a criminal conspiracy."
Your son and your wife and this lawyer have been committing fraud. They have been trying to steal your assets through a combination of undue influence and forgery. Forgery. I did not know about the forgery. Margaret showed me. She had pulled the trust documents from the county recorder's office. She compared my signature on the trust documents to my signature on a utility bill from the same year. They did not match. They were close, but they were not the same. The loops on the B were different. The slant was wrong. Someone had practiced signing my name. Someone had gotten very good at it. But they made a mistake. A tiny mistake that only a handwriting expert would catch. Kevin signed my name. I know it was him. I could see it in the way the letters slanted to the right. He wrote like I did. He learned from me. He used the same B and the same L. But he pushed too hard on the pen. He left grooves in the paper. I never pushed hard. I always used a light touch. The expert confirmed it. Kevin forged my signature on at least 4 documents, including the trust agreement itself. Margaret filed a lawsuit. We sued Kevin and Diane and Brad. We sued for fraud and undue influence and elder abuse. We asked the court to invalidate the trust. We asked for damages. We asked for a restraining order to prevent Kevin from accessing any of my accounts. The day the lawsuit was filed, Kevin called me. He was crying. He said he did not know what I was talking about. He said he loved me.
He said Margaret was lying to me. He said she was just trying to run up her bill. I listened to him cry, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, nothing. He was a stranger to me, a stranger with my last name. Diane moved out the next week. She did not say goodbye. She packed a bag while I was at Margaret's office. She left her wedding ring on the kitchen table. She took the good silverware. She took the china that belonged to her grandmother. She took the photo albums, all the pictures of us when we were young, all the pictures of the kids.
She took everything that mattered and left me with an empty house and a court date. The trial lasted 2 weeks. It was the worst 2 weeks of my life. Worse than the night I found the texts. Worse than the night I heard the recordings. Because in the trial, I had to sit in a room with my son and my wife and look at their faces while they lied about me. Kevin testified that I was forgetful. He said I had been losing my memory for years. He said I left the stove on. He said I got lost driving home from the grocery store. He said I could not manage my own money. He said the trust was my idea. He said he was just trying to help. Diane testified that I was emotionally abusive. She said I controlled her. She said I isolated her from her friends. She said I screamed at her. She said I broke a plate once during an argument. She said I was not the man she married. She said Brad was just a friend. She said the affair never happened.
She said Frank doctored the recordings. She said I was paranoid and unstable and a danger to myself. I sat at the defense table and I watched my wife of 42 years describe me as a monster. I watched my son describe me as a senile old man who could not be trusted with his own money. I wanted to stand up and scream. I wanted to walk over to Kevin and grab him by the collar and shake him until his teeth rattled. I wanted to ask him if he remembered the time I drove 4 hours in a snowstorm to bring him his backpack when he forgot it at home during his freshman year of college. I wanted to ask him if he remembered the time I sold my boat so he could have a down payment for his first car. I wanted to ask him if he remembered any of it. But I did not. I sat there. I let Margaret do her job. I trusted her, the way I trusted my son once. And I prayed I was not making the same mistake again. Margaret played the recordings for the jury. She showed the emails. She brought in the handwriting expert. She brought in Frank. She brought in a neurologist who examined me and testified that I had no signs of dementia or cognitive decline. She brought in my old boss, who testified that I ran a crew of 20 electricians and never lost a single dollar on a job. She brought in my neighbor, who testified that Diane was the one who screamed, that she heard it through the walls, that she saw Diane throw a glass at me once, that she called the police, but Diane talked her way out of it.
The jury deliberated for 6 hours. I waited in a room down the hall. I drank bad coffee from a vending machine. I paced. I thought about Lily. She was 12 at the time. Kevin and Amanda kept her away from the trial. They said it was not appropriate for a child. I understood, but I wanted to see her. I wanted to tell her that I did not do any of the things her father said I did. I wanted to tell her that I loved her, and I always would. I never got the chance. The jury came back with a verdict at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. They found in my favor on every count. They invalidated the trust. They awarded me damages of $250,000. They recommended that the district attorney file criminal charges against Kevin and Brad for forgery and elder fraud. The judge agreed. He ordered the case be referred to the prosecutor's office. Kevin did not look at me when the verdict was read. He stared at the table. Diane cried. Not for me, for herself. For the life she had lost, for the money that was slipping away. I looked at her and I felt something close to pity. Not forgiveness, just pity. She was an old woman who threw away her family for a man who would never love her. Brad was already backing away. I heard later that he stopped returning her calls. He had his own problems. The Bar Association opened an investigation. He lost his license. He lost his house. He lost everything. But winning did not feel like winning. I walked out of that courthouse alone. I got in my truck and I drove home to a house that was too big for one person. I sat in my recliner and I stared at the wall, and I thought about all the years I wasted on people who never loved me. Not really. They loved what I could give them. The house, the money, the free babysitting, the safety net. Once I stopped giving, they stopped loving. That is the ugly truth at the center of my life. That is the thing I have to carry. Kevin and Diane appealed the verdict. They lost. They appealed again. They lost again. Kevin spent his savings on lawyers. Amanda left him. She took Lily and moved to her mother's house in Ohio. She told Kevin she did not sign up for a husband who would defraud his own father. I do not know if she meant it or if she just saw which way the wind was blowing.
Either way, Lily was gone. I tried to reach out to her. I sent birthday cards. I sent Christmas presents. They all came back, returned to sender. Amanda did not want Lily to have anything to do with me. She said I was the one who destroyed the family. She said if I had just let things be, everyone would still be together. I laughed when I read that letter. I laughed until I cried. Kevin moved into a small apartment across town. She got a job at a craft store. She works the register. I saw her once at the grocery store. She looked old, older than 71 should look. Her hair was gray and thin, her hands shook. She saw me in the produce aisle and she froze. I picked up an apple. I put it in my bag.
I walked past her like she was a stranger, because that is what she was. A stranger who used to be my wife. Kevin lives in a different state now. I heard he moved to Nevada. I heard he works at a car dealership. I heard he remarried. I do not know if any of it is true. I stopped looking. I stopped caring. There is a limit to how much pain a person can carry, and I reached mine a long time ago. The house is gone. I sold it 2 years after the trial. I could not stay there. Every room had a ghost. The kitchen where Diane used to make pancakes on Sunday mornings. The garage where Kevin and I rebuilt the engine on his first car. The backyard where Lily learned to ride a bike. Too many memories. Too much weight. I sold it to a young couple with 2 kids. They painted the walls bright colors. They ripped out the carpet. They put a trampoline on the lawn. I drove by once and I almost didn't recognize it. That is a good thing. That house belongs to someone else now. Someone who still believes in family. Someone who has not learned what I learned. I live above a garage now. A friend of mine from the union owns the property. He rents it to me for $400 a month. It is small. It is quiet. It is enough. I have my recliner, and my TV, and my coffee pot. I have my tools in the corner. I do not use them anymore. I just like looking at them. I like remembering the feeling of a wrench in my hand, the feeling of fixing something. I cannot fix this.
There is no wrench big enough to tighten a broken heart. My phone does not ring much. My sister calls every Sunday. She is all I have left. She tells me I should go to therapy. She tells me I should join a senior center. She tells me I should find a hobby. I tell her I have a hobby. The hobby is sitting in this chair and remembering what it felt like to be loved. Even if it was fake. Even if it was a lie. At least I felt something. At least I was warm. The world's greatest grandpa mug sits on my kitchen counter. I wash it by hand every morning. I dry it with a paper towel. I put it back on the shelf. I do not drink out of it anymore. The coffee tastes wrong. It tastes like the day Lily gave it to me. It tastes like a little girl's hug. I cannot handle that flavor. I am 72 years old. I have maybe 10 years left if I am lucky. Maybe less. My father died at 68. His father died at 62. I have already outlived them both. I am playing with house money now. That is what the gamblers say. I was never a gambler. I was a saver. I was a planner. I built a life brick by brick, and I watched my family take a sledgehammer to it. They did not just take my money. They took my years. They took my trust. They took my belief that blood means something. I still have my retirement account. Not 900,000 anymore. The lawyers took a chunk. The taxes took another chunk. But I have enough. Enough to live on.
Enough to pay for this apartment and my truck and my groceries. I do not need much. I never did. The things I needed cannot be bought. They cannot be won in a lawsuit. They cannot be earned back with interest. They are gone. They have been gone for a long time. Sometimes I dream about Lily. She is 7 years old in the dream. She is holding my hand. We are walking to the ice cream shop at the end of our street. She has chocolate on her chin. She is laughing. She says, "Grandpa, you are my best friend." I wake up and I reach for her, and she is not there. She is in Ohio. She is 19. She has a phone. She could call me if she wanted to. She does not want to. That is the part they do not tell you about getting old. It is not the aches and the pains. It is not the doctor's appointments and the pills. It is the silence. It is the long, empty hours between dinner and bedtime. It is the knowledge that you outlived your usefulness. You are not a father anymore. You are not a grandfather. You are a memory. And memories get forgotten. I sit in my chair and I think about what I would say to Kevin if he walked through that door right now. I have played this conversation in my head 1,000 times. In some versions, I scream at him. In some versions, I hit him. In some versions, I cry and ask him why. Why did you do this? What did I do to make you hate me so much? But in the most honest version, I just look at him. I look at him and I see a scared little boy who never learned how to be a man. A boy who thought money was the same thing as love. A boy who will die alone, just like his father. I do not hate him anymore. Hate takes energy. I do not have much left. What I have is a dull ache that lives behind my ribs. It is there when I wake up. It is there when I fall asleep. It is the shape of my family, a hole where my heart used to be. Last week, I went to the hardware store. I needed a light bulb for the fixture above my sink. I walked down the tool aisle and I saw a father teaching his son how to pick out a hammer. The kid was maybe 10 years old. The father was patient. He explained the difference between a claw hammer and a framing hammer. He let the kid hold each one. He said the weight matters. He said you want a hammer that feels like an extension of your arm. I stood there and watched them. I watched them walk to the register together. The kid was carrying the hammer like it was a trophy. The father put his hand on the kid's shoulder. They left together. I bought my light bulb. I drove home. I sat in my truck in the garage for 20 minutes before I went inside. I sat there and I thought about all the trips to the hardware store with Kevin, all the Saturdays we spent wandering those aisles, all the projects we worked on together. I thought about the birdhouse we built when he was 8. It was crooked and ugly, and he painted it bright blue. We hung it in the oak tree. The birds never used it, but Kevin did not care. He was proud. He stood under that tree and he looked up at that crooked blue box and he said, "Look, Dad, I made something. I made something too. I made a family. I made a home. I made a life." And they tore it all down. They tore it down for money, for a man in a cheap suit, for a future that never came. I go to bed early now. The nights are long. I lie there and I listen to the furnace. I listen to the rain. I listen to the sound of nothing. That is the soundtrack of my life now. Not laughter, not the pitter-patter of little feet, not the sound of my wife humming in the kitchen. Nothing. This is what they took from me. Not just the house and the money and the trust. They took my story. They took the ending I was supposed to have. I was supposed to die in that house. I was supposed to be surrounded by grandchildren. I was supposed to close my eyes for the last time with Diane holding my hand. That is the deal. That is what every old man deserves. A soft landing, a gentle exit. Someone to say, "It is okay, Dad. You can let go now." No one will say that to me. I will die in this apartment above a garage. I will die alone. And maybe that is fitting. Maybe that is the natural conclusion of a life spent giving everything to people who were just waiting for me to stop breathing. I am not bitter. I am not angry. I am just tired. I am so tired. The coffee is cold now. I have been sitting here for an hour writing this. My hand hurts. My eyes hurt. Everything hurts. But I needed to say it. I needed someone to know. I needed the world to hear what happened to me. Not because I want pity. I do not want pity. I want you to understand.
I want you to look at your own family a little differently. I want you to ask yourself if they love you or if they love what you can give them, because the answer might break your heart. But it is better to know. It is better to know now than to find out when you are 72 years old, sitting in a cold apartment with a mug that says, "World's Greatest Grandpa," and no one left to call you by that name. I am going to rinse out this mug now. I am going to put it back on the shelf. I am going to watch the evening news. Then I am going to go to bed. Tomorrow will be the same as today, and the day after that will be the same as tomorrow. That is my life now. That is the rest of my story. There is no twist. There is no redemption. There is just a quiet room and a tired old man and a love that turned out to be a loan that came due long before I was ready to pay. If you see Lily someday, tell her I said hello. Tell her I still have her picture. Tell her I am proud of her. Tell her I never stopped loving her, even if she forgot me, even if she does not care. Someone should know. Someone should remember that I existed, that I mattered, that for a little while I was the center of someone's universe. Now I am just a footnote. Now I am just a cautionary tale.
Now I am just an old man in a small room with a big silence. That is the end. That is all there is.